Howdy folks, welcome to my retro media room, and today I decided to talk about 10 of the worst games from my collection. Now, not everything's making this list. There's gonna be some honorable mentions merely because I was not able to get the gameplay to work. But I will mention them at the end. So to start with, we have Ride to Hell Retribution, 1%. I don't understand the percent. This game is quite horrific. It's it's a bit of a stab at, oh, we're gonna make this mature and violent and adult themes and different things, and it's like, oh, goodness gracious, the fighting mechanics are horrific. I didn't encounter some of the game breaking bugs exactly like people have described before, but it was not. But the game, the way it goes from scene to loading, scene to loading, scene to loading, it's just this constant. It's like you're going. It wants you to go, but it's constantly a couple minutes, maybe 30 seconds, couple minutes of gameplay of writing, and then load screen. Something happens, load screen. I mean, man, it's hard to get through. It's hard to get through it all. I only played so much of it first time playing it, and you save a woman from a guy beating her up, and then they proceed to make love with their clothes on. So immediately after you save her, just screen switch, boom, and it's so cringe and cheesy, and it's a really bad game. Yeah. So here's the back of the box here. 2 fists, 2 wheels, no rules. He's a Vietnam vet of all things, right? The main character. So yeah, this game is now mind you, I want to talk about these games, of course, negatively because these are bad games, but I still like having them in my collection. I think it's very interesting to have terrible games as parts of history, and you're certainly going to see some of that in some of these historical titles, right? So, and these are in no particular order either. So these are, I'm kind of, the only order I put these in was kind of console generations, really, starting with newest to oldest. And next we have a personal one for me, Resident Evil 6. Oh boy, back in the day, because I'm a huge Resident Evil fan. And when this first came out, I was super excited for it. And I played it on the 360 here. Now, mind you, there is a current version that plays on current consoles. That's much more playable, okay? It's not the worst game ever. But when you played it at the time on either PS3 or 360 and you were a Resident Evil fan coming off of 4 and then 5, 5 being really great, 4 being a masterpiece, wow. Part 6, it's even though it has nice graphics technically, but the way the polish of it and how it runs and the frame rate and the mechanics are just bad. Choppy, horribly choppy frame rate. The direction of the game, they couldn't figure out. The game has an identity crisis. 1 minute it's an action shooter. I mean, even though, yeah, the Leon part is the best part of the game because it's more zombie focused, more traditional. It's the closest thing to traditional Resident Evil. Whereas Chris's part is nothing but it's just a third person shooter, and the whole thing is just an absolute mess. It's like a Michael Bay film on steroids in Resident Evil. And they tried, they took everything in the kitchen sink and threw it in and said, let's just go. Turn everything up to 11. No holds barred, big budget. It was a AAA budget game. That's why I criticize this harshly. It was a AAA budget game, and it's just bad. Like the frustrating mechanics, frustrating quick time events, enemies grabbing you in ways that are frustrating, make no sense. It's janky. It was as a Resident Evil fan, it was a huge letdown, a low point for the series. Thank goodness they came back with Resident Evil 7, aka Biohazard, on PlayStation, Xbox One, PS4, because that's an incredible game. So anyway, take a look at the back here. And this is two discs, disc 1 and voiceover pack. I think it's for all the different languages. So this is oddly enough. So yeah, Resident Evil 6 is Pretty rough. Next, we have Charlie's Angels. Boy, howdy, I fired it up for the first time to capture the gameplay, and my goodness, this game is goofy. The graphics, the the animations, the cutscenes in the beginning, they look like they're so life. I mean, granted, yeah, you know, there's a certain era of CGI where they are lifeless looking, but it's particularly bad. The character models look nothing. I mean, Lucy Liu looks somewhat. It looks, you can tell it's her, but like Drew Barrymore in the bikini in the beginning, I'm like, I couldn't tell it was her. And the combat mechanics are so bad and goofy, and it's with the terrible camera, lousy combo. It's just bad. Wow, it's just you can just tell by looking at it. It's just this, just horrific, pretty horrific. Easily one of the worst beat 'em ups I've ever played, especially 3D beat 'em ups. It's one of the worst by far. So you have the front here. Now, is it worth? Am I glad I have it? And see, I actually bought this factory sealed and opened it myself. So I'm just glad to have it because it's so funny how bad it is. It's so bad, it's pretty funny, and it's, you know, I consider it a part of GameCube history of like, hey, here's a GameCube exclusive for you, you know, because that's what this is, a GameCube exclusive. Boy, that's a bad one. And that's the same case with the next game, Batman Dark Tomorrow. Woo boy. Now, Batman games are somewhat hit or miss. There's some really good ones and there's some not so good ones, but this is easily one of the worst. Easily one of the worst. The graphics are super dark and muddy. It has these weird semi-fixed camera angles. The combat is clunky. You have to like bend down to do things like handcuff the guys, which I managed to figure out, but like you have to bend down to do things when you wouldn't think you'd have to, and using your equipment to jump across buildings is horrific, and you just randomly fall to your death, and it makes no sense. There's no flow to the game. It's really bad. It's really bad. It's easily one of the worst Batman games. So we got the back here. And then this does have I do have a part 2 of 2. That's interesting. I wonder what part 1 is, and that's the comic that came with it. So yeah, it's cool to have, of course. It's funny because this was actually one of the few Batman games that some people were excited for because it was based off of the comics, not any of the movies, not the cartoons. It was a straight comic adaptation Batman game, and well, not so great. Now, the next one is, oh man, it's so bad. Drake of the 99 Dragons. Wowee, wow, 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 wow. This game is one of the worst games I've ever played in my life. It has horrific shooting mechanics, camera, nonsensical aiming system, bland characters and world building. There's no world building. God, the camera's so bad. You can't invert your controls. There's no option to, which I've noticed that with some of the games these bad games I've been trying out. There's lack of control options because they just didn't think to implement them. And one of them just happened to be inverted and you couldn't change it. So it worked for me, but for a lot of people it wouldn't. And that was Aquaman on Xbox, by the way, which is an honorable mention on this list. But, as bad as it is, the fact that it had a nice frame rate and wasn't the worst playing thing in the world, it was just boring. As bad as it is, it wasn't as offensive as like something like this that is like makes you angry how bad it plays, and you just immediately quit and never pick it up again because of how frustrating and just wretched it is to try and drudge through, right? So we got the back, and then I got this brand new for cheap for like $10, shrink wrapped. Opened it up so I could relive the horror of this game that I originally played on a demo disc and would have never in a million years desired to buy it as a gamer, as a normal, like, oh, this is a good game, I want to own it. I literally wanted to have it just because it's so notoriously bad from my experience of games that I thought it was funny to have, right? It's kind of a gag. It's kind of a gag item for me at this point. So anyway, and this the inside. It has a Now, some of the graphics are fairly sharp for what they are, the cell shaded graphics and all that, and it's, you know, it hits a 60 FPS target, but it's just so bad. The controls and, like I said before, the controls and camera and everything, it's just so bad. It's an unplayable game. All right, and next, going to another generation here, we got Bubsy 3D on the PlayStation 1. Yeah, stunning, original. Bubsy 3D climbs back to the top. Check it out. EGM. See, that quote, I guarantee you, was the reviewer was joking. Like, he was not serious when he said that. And Gold X Award, one of the sleeper hits of '96, an experience that no action platformer gamer should experience. PS Extreme, both magazines I used to read. I mean, I'm like, I don't know where that happened, to be honest, but wow, Bubsy is, how do I describe it? I mean, the graphics are so simple. It's like, see, Star Fox on the Super Nintendo, you don't expect a lot of detail in the textures because it's a Super Nintendo game with the Super FX chip. That's just how it was. This looks like that, but it's a PlayStation 1 game. It's a 32-bit game with flat textures or flat polygons that have no texture to them everywhere, and crazy colors everywhere that make no sense, environments that make no sense. The controls are horrific. You know, steering your character and turning and moving and jumping around, and the platforming and the combat, it's just so nonsensical. What you're doing, it's like, what am I doing? What is my goal here? Why am I killing these things? How am I killing these things? Why am I collecting these orbs? And the game tries to break the fourth wall, and it tries to be clever with Bubsy and the things he says, but I'm like, guys, that doesn't land when the game is this bad. So yeah, this is easily one of the worst PlayStation 1 games I've ever played, and certainly one of the worst I own. I would also mention Clock Tower 2 as being a really, really bad game that I played back in the day. I wish I had it. It's worth a lot of money now, but I do not currently own it. I have all the rest of them, though. So with Bubsy 3D here, you got the back and the inside. So yeah, Bubsy it's rough. It's very rough. I don't even think any little kid even try to play this, they would be frustrated with how it's just hard to move your character and it makes no sense. And they wouldn't know what to do, and they would just turn it off. All right, next is an even worse game. Even worse. Pit Fighter on the Super NES. Oh, wow. Probably the worst fighting game I've ever played in my life. Now, mind you, the arcade version is actually playable and campy and funny, so it's enjoyable on certain levels. It's a digitized fighter like Mortal Kombat and so on. That was the craze at the time. Wow, this Super Nintendo port is it's one of the worst games I've ever played in my life. The controls are non-existent. They barely work. I can't get past the first fighter. And I think the most I've done, well, maybe I've gotten past them once, right, to the second stage. So that's it. Like, you're just mashing buttons. You're holding forward and mashing buttons and praying. That's all you can do. There's no combos. There's no connecting of attacks. Your character does, and it looks like your character is doing inappropriate things to you when they're standing over your grayed out dead body. It's just so bad. Probably the worst Super Nintendo game I own, and probably the worst one I've ever played. I mean, it's really, really bad. So it's pretty funny. Now, the arcade version, like I said, is actually pretty fun. It's goofy. You know, it's you appreciate the campiness of the arcade original, but man, no. It's so bad. It was worse than I expected. All right, and next up we have, taken out here, Total Recall. I don't have anything special here in terms of physical. I just have simply the cartridge here. So now with Total Recall, it was my first time playing it. I've heard about it. That's why I picked it up for cheap. Wow, people were not exaggerating. It's a frustrating, nonsensical, side-scrolling, air quotes, beat 'em up. You're running down the street. Guys randomly snatch you to the back alley. there's these ninja hopping around little weird dudes that you're swinging your arms at, and then you're whatever's going on with his chest as you're running, I'll never know. And you guys hop out of, like Mario style, they hop out of pipes or something, or trash cans or whatever they are, and shoot guns at you, and people throw stuff at you, and it's just wow, it's so bad. Like that, like I wasn't sure how bad it would be. I was like, it's probably not good, but who knows? No, it's even worse than I anticipated based off of things I'd heard, but that's why I owned it, because I was like, hey, I've heard a Total Recall. It's supposed to be terrible. Let's buy it. Okay, next is a famous one. Shout out to Angry Video Game Nerd. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. It's funny, this copy I got a hold of it. Somebody, I don't know where this came from, but somebody put a printed copy of the spine here. And of course, I've got the booklet with it. But yeah, so Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Wow, wow, wow. Angry Video Game Nerd does not exaggerate nor disappoint with how bad this game is, how frustrating it is, how hard it is, how nonsensical it is. I mean, there's even one point on my second try of trying to make it survive through it. And first off, you got the people running around, and 1 second that they're not hurting you, and you don't know what's going on. The next second, they're blowing you up, throwing things at you, hitting you, running into you, and it's like, wait a minute, I thought they were harmless NPCs. Oh, wait, no, they're enemies. Oh, wait, no, they're... And then I became Dr. Jekyll, I became Mr. Hyde after being Dr. Jekyll, and I literally just dropped dead. I turned into Mr. Hyde like you're supposed to, and I just dropped dead right then and there. Wow, this game is unplayable. It's so bad. It's really, really bad. It's notorious for a reason, right? So, and right here I even have the booklet with it. So I have a very nice copy here of my official Nintendo shell here. So, yeah, that's very bad. All right, and my top one here, is probably somewhat obvious. E.T. on the Atari 2600. Well, this is as famous as it gets, folks. This game is one of the... people would make the argument that it's the worst game ever made, especially with its history. There's so much history with this game. I mean, it was not the cause of the video game collapse of 82 or 83, but I think it was either 82 or 83 when the game industry collapsed, and then it was like 2 or 3 years until Nintendo came around and revived it. Everybody thought the fad was over with console gaming, right? Bringing the arcade home and so on. They spent $1 million on the IP, and the game makes no sense. You're supposedly going around picking up candy, and you're being chased. You can't get away from these agents. You're falling into pits, and you come out of them. It's telling you to go directions, and when you go those directions, you go there. Then it tells you to go another direction. It makes no sense. You go to prison. You can break out. The game is nonsensical. If you have a crispy new controller, the controls makes the controls a little easier. I've played it with a bad controller, and it was unplayable. But still, it's so bad. It makes no sense. It may not have caused that the game industry collapse, but it was a bit of the tip of the spear, or it was the sign of things to come with the way it came out and bombed the way it did. That was the biggest, earliest, clearest sign of, wow, things are going downhill. And then it did, right? So I have 2 copies here. One of which is a custom case I got a hold of. I thought it was pretty cool. Shout out to Etsy. And I've got the game here. That's 1 copy. And then I put this for cushion here. And I've got the game, another game here, the poster, and the booklet here I actually have with it. So I have all but the box, which is very hard to find. So that's 10 of my worst games. A couple honorable mentions I'll show here are Dino Crisis 3 on the original Xbox and Superman 64. Now I was going to show these, but I could not get Dino Crisis to read on my Xbox. It has no scratches on it, but I think it's been buffed, and it might have buffed off enough to hurt the data. Maybe it just doesn't work. I don't know. Because the Xbox played other games fine, so that tells me that this disc is just not playing. So I'm in the market for a Dino Crisis 3 disc that works. And same goes here for Superman 64, which is easily one of the worst games of all time. Most people know that, but for the life of me, I could not get it to work. I got other 64 games working just fine. Cannot get this cartridge to work. So I've tried everything I know to do. So I guess it's just defunct, or it's just no good. And I'll be in the market to get another one. So it's all right. But I do have everything. But I do have his booklet at least. So all right. Those were some of the worst games I've ever played and own ever. If you like this content, give me a thumbs up, subscribe, hit the notification bell for more videos in the future. I'm going to be doing more videos like this with gameplay because I can capture gameplay now, which is fun. So I'll catch you next time.